Hello, everybody, and welcome to English Phonetics. This is Henry Sevilla, and I'm going to be, like I said this morning, your phonetics professor for the rest of the semester. This is the first in a series of videos on the pronunciation of English, which I will be making for you now that we have this coronavirus pandemic going on. And so this video is going to be a 15-minute video that will cover three aspects. Number one, the challenges of English pronunciation. Number two, names for consonants and vowels in IPA in English, and some useful resources such as websites. Starting with challenges, there are several challenges that you and any regular English learner will be facing in terms of pronunciation, and I want to make you aware of that. The first one is the issue of accents. Now, accents are varied, they're everywhere, and they're different everywhere you go. You might be surprised that a word such as Babel can also be pronounced as Babel, and I think I once heard somebody say Babel. A word like cow, believe it or not, which is a word we hear as cow in mainstream US American pronunciation, can also be pronounced as coo, like that, in Scottish English. I was in Scotland recently and I was very surprised that they even joke about it, and they have souvenirs with different spellings for the word cow. So instead of saying Highland cows, they say Highland coos, and so on and so forth. You might also be surprised that in some varieties of Irish English, instead of saying fine, they might say things like fane, and so on and so forth. So accents are everywhere. English is a diverse language, and you should not be intimidated by this. You should only open your mind, and whenever you run into a pronunciation which is different from what you know, just put it in the list of interesting facts of English pronunciation and move on. All right. The second challenge that students learning English pronunciation like you will find is that books use different phonetic symbols. Software uses a lot of different phonetic symbols, and so it might be confusing. Um, Now, phonetic symbols are a type of characters that we will be using in the course in order to represent the sound, because English, unfortunately for some of us, is not a phonetic language. It's an aphonetic language, meaning that there is not necessarily a correlation between what you see and what you get in terms of pronunciation. So, in order for us to do that, we have invented, well, not we, but linguists have invented something called the IPA, which is the International Phonetic Alphabet, and it's an alphabet especially used to represent phonetic sounds, not words, not syllables, not spelling. It's for sounds. So, a word like pronunciation is transcribed phonetically like this. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. So it goes like this: pronunciation. So it's very useful because from now on you don't need to say, or you don't need to hesitate about the pronunciation of that word. And so you can avoid errors of pronunciation, such as when people say pronunciation or pronunciation or whatever. Now you know that it has a p sound, it has an sound, it has a schwa sound, which is a very weak vowel. I'll talk more about that later. It has an n sound, it has a wedge sound here, it has another n sound, it has a sibilant sound, it has a tense e here, and then it has a diphthong, which is a, and then it has this symbol which is called an esh symbol. It has a schwa and an n symbol, which is an alveolar sound. Don't be intimidated by the terminology that I'm using. I will walk you through it as we move on into the course. And speaking of this, another challenge is that there are many difficult words in English. But again, my word of advice here is for you not to be intimidated. If you run into a word that you find difficult, do not avoid it. Pronounce it 100 times until you become confident and until you have overcome it. Believe it or not, a difficult word for English learners is the word girl. That's because it contains a sound that we don't have in Spanish. We don't have the earl sound. And so this can be challenging. There are even videos on YouTube to teach you how to pronounce the word girl and world and all that, because these two words get confused a lot, and guess what? They're very common words in English, so you better get them right. Now, that is in terms of challenges in English pronunciation. Of course, there are many more, but I wanted to talk about these three for now. Let me move on to the next section, which is the names for the consonant sounds of consonant and vowel symbols. It's actually not for the sounds, it's the names for consonant and vowel symbols in the International Phonetic Alphabet. Let me show you this handout I prepared last year for my students in a pronunciation class at UCR. That was in phonology. So what I'm doing here is I'm giving you a list of consonant symbols used in the IPA and a list of vowel symbols used in the IPA. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on the names for the symbols used for consonant sounds here. For vowel sounds, I'll be talking about that later on in another video. So here you will find the symbol, the name or description, some example words, and other versions that you will be finding in books, in software, and along the course of your lives. I will be focusing on those symbols that are not so familiar for you. Like this one, that's easy because we have this sound, we have it in our spelling system, and we have it also in our IPA system. So just, if you will, it's called a voiceless alveolar fricative. Don't you worry, I will talk more about that very strange terminology. But I want to focus, like I said, on the quote unquote, on the weird ones. This is called a flap. Some people call it a tap. Fine. I'm not going into that debate. But for now, let's simply know that this is called a flap symbol, and it is used to represent the US English pronunciation of the words like city. You may have noticed how the British tend to say city, the US speakers might say city, whereas in British English they say later or later. In US English they say later. So this sound here, not the spelling, this sound here is represented phonetically through this symbol, which is called like I said, the flap. Now this is another weird symbol. Again, I'm using weird figuratively. This is another quote-unquote weird symbol or strange symbol you will find in the IPA, and it's called the glottal stop. It simply means that when you pronounce it, your glottis closes abruptly to stop the airflow to produce the following sound: mountain, fountain, sentence, curtain, fountain, and all that. And so that's called a glottal stop. We will be practicing that a lot in the course. I'm not going to go into this one because it's very similar to it's the same actually that we have in our Latin alphabet. This one is interesting. It's called a theta sound or a theta symbol. And it's the sound or the symbol we use to represent the pronunciation of words such as thing, wrath, Athens, and so on. So for example, broth and all that, that's called a theta symbol. This one is called an F symbol, and it's very similar to the theta sound, except that this is voiced. Both are interdental fricatives. Don't worry about the terminology. I'll let you know later on what they are. But this one is voiceless, meaning there is no vibration when you pronounce it. So you say thing, so no vibration in the sound here. And here there is vibration when you say they. At least in slow, careful speech, you say they. In connected speech, other things happen. I will talk about them later on. Now, another example is the word together or soothe. The word soothe is interesting because some varieties of English also admit soothe as a voiceless interdental fricative. Now, here is another one that you might be interested in, and this is the symbol we're going to be using to represent the English R. Because if we use a regular R as we use it in Spanish, like this one, then we're representing a different symbol. This regular R, which is technically called a trilled R, is the R we use to represent more sonorant Rs. So for example, arracache, arroz, arremeter, and all that. That's the R we use. But for the English R, what we use is this voiced postalveolar approximant, which is also called the voiced postalveolar retroflex. And it is a word we use in rapid, Rachel, rest. The problem is if you use this sound, the regular R, the trill R, to represent rapid, then the person reading this transcription would read rapid, Rachel, rest, and all that. So we're going to avoid this symbol in our phonetics classes and use the inverted one, which is the one that represent the R in most varieties of US American English. Scottish English is a different story. I'll talk about that in a video conference later on. So here's another symbol, very common. It's called the eng or engma symbol, and it is the symbol that we use to represent words like song, sing, thing. You may feel that there is a vibration. It's a nasal sound, meaning the nasal cavity is involved in the production of this sound, and it's also a velar sound because the velum, which is the soft palate in your speech apparatus, gets involved when you pronounce it, when you articulate it. Another sound you might be interested in is this one, which is called an esh symbol. And it is the symbol we use to represent words like show, Chicago. Believe it or not, this is Chicago, not Chicago. Machine, ash, Ashley, show. No, show is already here. Mesh, and so on and so forth. So that's an esh. A similar sound is the th sound or symbol, which is the one we use in order to represent words, sounds in words such as choke, chest, arch, wrench, and so on and so forth. Two more symbols that you might find interesting include the yoke symbol, which is the one that we use in order to represent words such as vision, which is not vision, but vision. There is a little vibration there, which is a voice postal velar fricative sound. Fricative simply means that there is a friction or constriction of the air when you pronounce the sound, and it's very common when you pronounce sibilant sounds such as z, s, and so on. But this one, specifically speaking, is a voice postal velar fricative sound. I will tell you more about that terminology later on. Don't be intimidated. What matters for now is that words such as vision, garage, pleasure, they take this sound and it's called a yoke sound. This one is called a de-yoke sound, and it's the word we use in words such as schedule, education, George, and it's a powerful sound. You shouldn't be too shy to pronounce it. That's it for now with the names for consonant symbols. I will be talking more about vowel symbols in another video. And this brings me to the end of my presentation today, which is some useful websites that you might want to use. The first one is youglish.com. It's very interesting because here you can simply type in a word and the software will give you tons of videos of native speakers who have pronounced that word. So for example, let me give you the word girl. Oh, no, I misspelled it. Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, one more time. It's very slow. Oh no. So it goes like this. So you type in a word and then see what happens. So what you get is native speakers, tons of videos where that word is pronounced. If you click on the following video here, you will find another speaker pronouncing the word girl and with the script here, so that's wonderful. If you want another accent, you can select between US, all, UK, Australian, and so on and so forth. And you can type in any word you want, any weird word, any word that is difficult for you. You simply type it in and you will get the pronunciation. Another resource that I would like to share with you before time is up is topphonetics.com, which is a website that will allow you to do phonetic transcription. So for example, if you want the word girl transcribed, you type it in, and then you go here where it says top show transcription, and then you will get it transcribed here for you. Now be careful because the symbols they use here are not 100% up to date, but it's a good beginning. You can also select whether you want it in British form, whether you want weak forms, and if it's full text, and so on. I will be explaining more about top phonetics in another video because I think time is up. And I would like to finally invite you to become aware of your own limitations in terms of pronunciation so that you can start little by little overcoming them. Thank you so very much, and I will see you again in another video on phonetics.